In an episode of Britain's Newsroom on Thursday, December the 4th, 2025, I stated that Thomas Markle, the Duchess of Sussex's father, brought Meghan up while her mother, Doria Ragland, was in prison. I believe this to be the case based on what I now understand to be misinformation I had seen online. I was questioned about the validity of this claim during the broadcast, and I repeated this belief, which I now understand to be false. This was a genuine error. I accept what I have now been told on behalf of Miss Ragland, that she raised her daughter and that she has never been in prison or jail. I apologise sincerely to Miss Ragland and her family for any pain my comments may have caused, and I'm happy to set the record straight.
And can I just say on behalf of GB News, because I was on the programme that day, we all wish to apologise to Miss Ragland for the error, and we are happy to correct the record.
So you've just watched that clip. Let it sit for a moment. Because what you just witnessed was not accountability. It was damage control, carefully measured, legally sanitized, and delivered only because the truth cornered them with nowhere left to run. GB News did not wake up one morning with a sudden moral awakening. Carole Malone did not suddenly discover compassion. This apology exists because the lie went too far, stayed on air too long, and finally crossed the one line even GB News' lawyers couldn't spin away. Let's be absolutely clear about what happened here. A sitting GB News panel allowed a false claim to be broadcast about Doria Ragland, the mother of Meghan Sussex, a private citizen, alleging that she had been imprisoned. Not questioned, not speculated, asserted. On air, as fact. That claim was entirely fabricated. No records, no evidence, no sourcing. Just misinformation, confidently delivered because the target was safe, or so they thought. And that's the part people need to understand. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the predictable result of a media ecosystem that has trained itself to believe that anything said about Meghan Sussex or her family is fair game. For years now, the rules have been different when it comes to her. Different standards, different ethics, different levels of scrutiny, conveniently lowered to the floor. If this claim had been made about the mother of Catherine, Princess of Wales, the studio would have gone silent in horror. If it had been made about Camilla, if it had been made about any white, British, upper-class woman connected to the monarchy. But Doria Ragland? She's American. She's private. She's black. And she's connected to Meghan Sussex, which means in certain corners of the British media, she becomes collateral. And let's talk about that specifically, because the choice of lie matters. They didn't falsely claim Doria Ragland had financial trouble. They didn't suggest she was difficult or estranged or opinionated. They chose imprisonment, one of the oldest, ugliest stereotypes historically attached to black people, and black women in particular, criminality by default, suspicion as baseline, guilt implied without evidence. That is not random. That is not neutral. That is not harmless gossip. That is defamatory, racialized storytelling dressed up as commentary. And it aired on GB News, a channel that repeatedly insists it is the brave truth-teller fighting woke censorship, while quietly proving, again and again, that it cannot be trusted with basic facts. The apology you just saw did not come easily. It came after public pushback, after the claim was debunked, after legal exposure became impossible to ignore. And notice what wasn't in that apology. There was no reflection on why such a claim was believed, no acknowledgement of the wider pattern of dehumanization aimed at Meghan Sussex's family, no recognition of the harm caused, not just reputationally, but emotionally. Just a careful walkback, a tidy sentence, a hope that the audience would move on. But here's the problem. This incident doesn't exist in isolation. It sits on top of a mountain of similar behavior. For years now, GB News has platformed columnists and commentators who recycle the same narratives, that Meghan Sussex is untrustworthy, manipulative, dangerous, dishonest. And when you frame a woman that way long enough, the lies start to metastasize. Soon, it's not just about her. It becomes about her mother, her children, anyone connected to her. And because those lies are aimed at people the audience has been trained not to empathize with, the guardrails disappear. That's how you end up with an on-air claim about a private citizen's supposed imprisonment, broadcast with confidence, no verification, and no shame. Until the apology becomes unavoidable. Carole Malone, in particular, has built a career on provocation, masquerading as opinion. She thrives on outrage. She thrives on saying what she knows will inflame, not inform. But here's the thing about opinion journalism. You are still bound by facts. You do not get to invent a criminal past for someone's mother because you dislike their daughter. You do not get to launder gossip through a television studio and call it commentary. And you do not get to pretend it's all just robust debate when the subject is a real human being with a real life. Doria Ragland is not a royal. She is not a public office holder. She is not a media personality. She is a private citizen who has spent years being dragged into a circus she never asked for, solely because her daughter married into an institution that then rejected her. And yet, time and time again, she is treated as expendable. What makes this even telling is how rare this kind of apology is when it comes to Meghan Sussex and her family. British media outlets routinely get things wrong about her. They misreport, they exaggerate, they editorialize facts into fiction. And most of the time, nothing happens. No correction, no apology, no accountability. So when an apology does occur, it tells you something important. This wasn't just morally wrong, it was legally risky. This crossed from narrative building to defamation, and suddenly, the bravado disappears. GB News loves to brand itself as fearless, uncancelable, untouchable. But the moment the lie became indefensible, they folded. Quietly, carefully, and without addressing the culture that produced it. And that culture is the real story here. A culture where Meghan Sussex is treated as a problem to be managed rather than a person, where her blackness is scrutinized, minimized, or weaponized depending on convenience, where her family is portrayed as suspicious by default, simply for existing outside the British aristocratic mold. This apology does not erase the damage. It does not undo the hours that claim lived online. It does not reach everyone who heard the lie and internalized it. And that's another uncomfortable truth. Misinformation spreads faster than corrections. For every viewer who saw the apology, there are countless others who only remember the accusation. And GB News knows this, which is why this should not be treated as a minor slip or an isolated error. It should be seen as evidence of systemic failure, editorial, ethical, and cultural. If this channel truly cared about credibility, it would be asking harder questions internally. How did this get on air? Who approved it? Why wasn't it challenged in real time? Why did no one pause and ask for proof? But those questions threaten the entire business model, because outrage content depends on speed, not accuracy, on confidence, not caution, on targets who are unlikely to be defended by the same institutions that protect others. And Meghan Sussex has never been afforded that protection. Neither has her mother. So yes, the apology happened, and it matters, but not in the way GB News hopes it will. It matters because it confirms what many people have been saying for years, that certain outlets are willing to say anything as long as the subject is Meghan Sussex or someone connected to her. It matters because it exposes the double standards in British media accountability. And it matters because it reminds us that racism in media doesn't always wear a hood. Sometimes it wears a blazer and calls it commentary. This moment should not be brushed aside. It should be remembered, referenced, documented, because the next time someone says, they're just asking questions, or it's only opinion, or you're being too sensitive, this is the answer. No. This is what happens when bias goes unchecked. This is what happens when lies are allowed to breathe. And this is what happens when a media outlet forgets that words have consequences, until lawyers remind them. Doria Ragland deserved better. The audience deserved better. And British media needs to reckon with why it took public pressure for the truth to matter at all. And that's not cancel culture. That's accountability. Finally catching up. I'm Smiley, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button.